On April 11th, 2025, a man pulled into my shop holding a half-empty jug of green coolant in one hand and pointing at a temperature gauge needle that had crept past the halfway mark with the other. He had done everything right, or so he thought. He had checked his fluids before a long weekend trip. He had topped off what was low. He had spent $20 at the auto parts store on what the label called Universal Long Life Antifreeze. 3 weeks later, his water pump was weeping, his thermostat was stuck halfway, and a strange milky residue was forming around the edges of his radiator cap. Today, I am revealing why one wrong jug of coolant can quietly destroy a modern engine before summer even arrives, and why the cars rolling into shops every May and June are paying for mistakes drivers made months earlier without ever realizing it. I have seen this story play out hundreds of times, and it always follows the same pattern. A driver notices their coolant is a little low. They walk into the auto parts store. They see a wall of jugs in a dozen different colors with words like Universal, all makes, extended life, and global formula stamped across the front. They pick the cheapest one that says it works for everything. They pour it in. They drive away. And for weeks, sometimes months, nothing seems wrong. The temperature gauge sits where it always sits. There are no warning lights. The heater still blows hot. The engine still starts on the first try. Then, Memorial Day weekend arrives. The temperature outside climbs into the 90s. The driver loads up the family for a road trip, hits highway speeds with the air conditioning blasting, and suddenly, that gauge starts moving, slowly at first, then faster. By the time they pull over to the shoulder, the damage is already done. This is not a freak accident. This is a chemical reaction that has been building inside their cooling system since the day they poured that $20 jug into the reservoir. And the worst part is, almost nothing on the bottle warns them about it. Let me explain what most drivers, and honestly a lot of younger mechanics too, do not really understand about modern coolant. Coolant is not just colored water. It is not just antifreeze. The fluid running through your engine is doing 4 jobs at once. It is regulating temperature. It is preventing freezing. It is suppressing boiling. And it is constantly fighting corrosion inside an engine built from multiple different metals. That last job is the one nobody ever talks about, and it is the job that gets your water pump, your radiator, your heater core, and even your head gasket destroyed when the wrong coolant goes in. Here is the part most people miss. Modern engines are built almost entirely from aluminum. The block is aluminum. The cylinder heads are aluminum. The water pump housing is aluminum. The radiator end tanks might be plastic, but the cores are aluminum. That aluminum sits next to steel bolts, brass fittings, copper heater cores, and rubber hoses, all of it bathed in a hot, pressurized liquid for hours every day. Without the right corrosion inhibitors in that liquid, the metals start fighting each other. This is called galvanic corrosion, and it can be happening inside your engine right now, whether you know it or not. The only thing standing between your aluminum water pump and a slow chemical death is the additive package in your coolant. There are roughly 3 families of coolant chemistry on the market today, and they are not interchangeable, no matter what the bottle promises. The old green stuff most people grew up with is called IAT, inorganic additive technology. It uses silicates and phosphates to coat metal surfaces and prevent corrosion. It works, but the protective coating wears out fast, usually within 2 years or 30,000 miles. Then there is OAT, organic acid technology. It is usually orange, red, or pink, and it uses carboxylate acids to protect specifically the kinds of aluminum and plastic found in modern engines. It can last 5 years or 150,000 miles. And then there are hybrid formulas, HOAT, which combine both approaches. These come in yellow, turquoise, blue, and just about every other color the marketing department could think of. Now, here is where the $20 mistake actually happens. When you mix these chemistries, the additives do not blend, they react. Silicates from the old green coolant can drop out of solution when they meet the acids in OAT coolant. They form a thick, sandy sludge that looks almost like brown jelly when you drain the radiator. That sludge clogs the tiny passages in your heater core. It restricts flow through the radiator fins. It coats the impeller of your water pump until it can no longer move fluid efficiently. And the corrosion inhibitors that were supposed to protect your aluminum are now sitting at the bottom of your overflow tank instead of doing their job. The worst part is, this damage is invisible at first. The coolant still looks like coolant. The gauge still reads normal in cool weather. The system still holds pressure. But underneath, the protective film inside your engine is failing. Aluminum begins to pit. Solder joints in the radiator weaken. The seal on the water pump dries out and cracks. And then summer hits. When ambient temperatures climb, your cooling system has to work harder. The thermostat opens fully. The fan runs longer, coolant pressure rises, and every weak point that was quietly created over the winter and spring suddenly gets tested at the worst possible moment. That is why my shop floor fills up every May and June with overheating cars, blown head gaskets, and confused owners holding receipts for the wrong coolant they bought back in February. Now, the auto parts store is not entirely innocent here. Walk down any coolant aisle in America and you will see jugs labeled Universal, fits all makes, all colors, all years. Some of them are even labeled to mix safely with any other coolant. That marketing language is doing a lot of heavy lifting. What the label often does not tell you in big letters is that universal coolants are formulated to be a compromise. They contain a mix of inhibitors designed to be tolerated by most systems, not optimized for any of them. In a vehicle that requires a specific OAT formula, like many modern Hondas, Toyotas, GM products, Fords, and most European cars, that universal formula falls short on the exact corrosion protection your engine was engineered around. It will not freeze, it will not boil, but it will not protect your aluminum the way the factory fluid does, and over time, that is the only thing that matters. The driver who walked into my shop that day in April had done what millions of people do every spring. He had topped off his cooling system with a jug that looked close enough. The original fluid in his car was a specific Asian spec long life formula, pink, low silicate, designed for his exact engine. The jug he bought was the wrong coolant. It was green, a traditional IAT, full of silicates and phosphates that his engine was never designed to tolerate. By the time I drained his system, the coolant came out cloudy and gray. The water pump weep hole had a crusty residue around it. The thermostat housing had a film of scale on the inside that I could scrape off with my fingernail. None of this was visible from the outside. None of it would have triggered a warning light, and another 1,000 miles of summer driving would have ended with a tow truck and a 4-figure repair bill. Here is the uncomfortable part nobody likes to hear. The cooling system is one of the only systems on a modern car that gets almost no real diagnostic attention until it fails catastrophically. Engines have dozens of sensors monitoring fuel, air, oxygen, knock, timing, and emissions. The cooling system has, in most cars, exactly one sensor, the coolant temperature sensor. That sensor only tells the computer how hot the fluid is. It does not tell whether the fluid is the right fluid, whether it has lost its corrosion inhibitors, or whether sludge is building up inside the radiator. By the time temperature actually climbs into the warning zone, the system has already failed. There is no early warning. There is no check engine light for degraded coolant chemistry. There is only the gauge, and the gauge does not care what color the liquid is. So here is what you need to do, and none of it is complicated. The first step is figuring out exactly what your vehicle requires, not what looks close, not what the parts store guy recommends because it was on sale, not what your buddy uses in his truck. The owner's manual will tell you the specification. It may list Dexcool, Toyota Super Long Life, MB 325.5, G13, or similar standards. That specification is what matters. The color of the fluid is almost meaningless because manufacturers change dyes constantly, and two completely different chemistries can look identical in the bottle. Once you know the specification, buy fluid that meets it exactly. If your car calls for a low silicate OAT formula, do not pour in traditional green. If it calls for a phosphate-based Asian formula, do not pour in a European G12. If you do not know what is currently in your system because someone else serviced it before you, the safest move is a full flush and refill with the correct factory specification fluid. That flush is usually under $150 at most shops, and it is one of the cheapest forms of insurance you will ever buy for an engine. If you find yourself with a low coolant level and you are not sure what is in there, the right answer is not to top it off with whatever is on the shelf. The right answer is a small amount of distilled water in an emergency, just enough to get you home, and then a proper inspection. Distilled water alone will not protect against corrosion long term, but it will not chemically react with whatever is already in your system the way the wrong coolant will. A small amount of distilled water for a few days is far less harmful than a half gallon of incompatible chemistry that will sit in your engine for a year. And here is the last thing nobody tells you. Coolant has an expiration date, even when it is sealed in a jug, and it absolutely has one once it is in your engine. The corrosion inhibitors deplete over time as they do their job. A 5-year coolant is not 5 years of protection forever. It is 5 years from the day it was installed. If your car is older and you do not know when the coolant was last changed, assume it is past due. Old, depleted coolant looks fine, but offers almost no corrosion protection, which means every metal in your cooling system is slowly being eaten away while you drive. Resets do not help here. Diagnostic scanners do not help here. There is no software fix for the wrong fluid in the wrong system. The only fix is to drain it, flush it, and refill it with the correct specification before the heat of summer turns a slow chemical reaction into a sudden mechanical failure on the side of an interstate. The driver who came in that April day got lucky. He caught it before Memorial Day. We flushed his system, replaced his thermostat, refilled with the correct factory specification fluid, and he drove away with a cooling system that should give him years of trouble-free service. The repair was under $500. The repair he would have faced a month later, after a blown head gasket on a hot interstate, would have been well over $4,000. All of it because of a $20 jug of the wrong color liquid. This is the kind of mistake that does not feel like a mistake at the time. It feels responsible. It feels like maintenance. It feels like the kind of thing a good owner does. And that is exactly why it is so common and so destructive. The driver does everything right except the one detail that actually matters, and the engine pays for it months later in the worst possible weather. So before this Memorial Day weekend, before the temperatures climb and the cooling system gets pushed to its limit, do three things. Pop the hood and look at the color and condition of your coolant. Pull the owner's manual and confirm the exact specification your vehicle requires. And if there is any doubt about what is in there or how old it is, get a flush and refill done now while it is still cool outside and shops are not slammed with overheating emergencies. The difference between a $100 service in May and a $4,000 repair in July is almost always one decision made months earlier. If this changed how you think about that jug of coolant on the auto parts store shelf, hit like so other drivers see it before summer hits. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns of the small mistakes that quietly destroy modern engines. If you have ever been burned by the wrong coolant, drop your story in the comments. The most expensive repair is not the one that breaks your car. It is the one you could have avoided for the price of reading one line in the owner's manual.